People have been asking me lately about this idea of what I was talking about, creation yesterday, and how rather than it becoming a biological process that manifests through natural formative processes, that there's an underlying consciousness that causes it to transform into material matter. Now, someone had also asked me about the Druids, and they asked me if the Druids had ever practiced or believed in reincarnation, and absolutely they did, very much so. And there was actually even a kind of a deity or a Druid of Irish Gaelic ancient reincarnation transmigration states known as the Tuan the Maccarroll. Sorry, the Tuan Maccarroll. It's hard to pronounce. What it basically is, this god sort of begins life in a proto-version in Ireland as something called a Somloth. And what that was, it's a being without shape or form. It's very similar to what the idea of an elemental. It has no actual shape, but it can take on shapes in time. Now, Tuan Maccarroll, he was apparently, he seems to have been a Somloth who attained a human form. Then something happened in very far off ancient Ireland. Actually, my next book is going to be talking about this. So that caused everybody in Ireland to die, a catastrophe. What actually really did happen, by the way, in 2500 BC. The population of Ireland just vanished, and Orkney as well. And it was a poison that was on the land, possibly caused by this other Irish kind of archetype of the black pig, which is a pig which tears up the landscape and leaves these poisonous, toxic lands behind. And that again, tsunami, right? Allegories, that's what we're talking about here. Now, this Somloth, it still exists, even though it's no longer has a physical form as a human. It still exists as an elemental, primordial consciousness manifestation. It still exists, and it waits to be reborn again. Now, what happens in the Irish story is that he becomes a stag. Now, you always associate the stags with the shamans, the stag. So that's almost like a power animal that's associated with shamanic concepts. From that, I think he then becomes a wild boar. He transforms into a wild boar. And from that, he then transforms into a hawk or an eagle. It's definitely a bird of prey. The translations are a bit weird. And then finally a salmon, and that's where it gets really good, because the wife of a chieftain called it's Carol or Carolil, something like that. What she does is she catches him in the lake, she eats him, she eats Tuan Maccarroll, and what happens then is that his elemental Somloth is then transmigrated into a child she is carrying in her womb, and then she gives birth to him in living form again. So he not only reincarnates in human form, but his Somloth, it carries through animals. And this is a very Druidic idea that animals and even rocks and rivers and sacred wells all contain the possibility of this form to enter it. So this is why a lot of Irish megalithic sites of the sacred stones are dead. But not all, like the Leofala Tara and other places are alive. At Carrickeel here in Sligo, they're alive. But they're not as alive as places like Avebury and Stonehenge in England, because people have almost put their own Somloth into it. You understand what I'm saying? They've loved the stones more, that they put their own magic into it. Again, the upcoming book is all about this very idea. So yes, the Druids did believe in reincarnation, but it was not necessarily reincarnation from one body to the next. It was reincarnation through a whole form of other life forms in order to gain the wisdom of all the experiences of all these animals, and then become a human again through the ingestion of an eaten fish, a salmon. And also this story of Tuan Maccarroll, he also was there when he was reborn from this woman, the chieftain's wife, Carol. When he was born from this woman's womb, he was there to assist the Irish through the loss of the Druid ways and into Christianity. So he's a kind of a god of transmigration of disasters. And the Druids portray and looked upon the conversion of Ireland to Christianity in the same way the most earliest Irish stories talk about the Irish being destroyed by a great catastrophe. One was a physical catastrophe that happened, probably was the 2500 BC, that destroyed the cultures that built the megaliths, the rebuilding and repopulation of Ireland again. And the second catastrophe was the spiritual and psychological catastrophe, cultural catastrophe, that destroyed the ancient Irish traditions with the arrival of Roman Christianity. The snakes. So yes, the Irish Druids, they very much did believe in reincarnation, but it was purely based on this idea of the somlith, of the unmanifest spiritual consciousness form that entered into living and even things like stones. So yes, remember that one. Reincarnation is very much part of the ancient Irish, Gaelic and even Celtic tradition.